Echo 6-1, Tango Logic, over.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get
No, what? Did you box moving target?
602.
No, I took an auto track.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Wow, look at that, man. Look at that.
On November 14th, 2004, Commander David Fravor and his wingman pilot took off from the USS Nimitz, which was on maneuver south of San Diego.
I was the commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 4-1, the Black Aces. We're flying brand new Super Hornets. It was an air defense exercise, 2 good guys against 2 bad guys. Probably 70 miles, 60 miles off the coast in the gap between San Diego and Ensenada.
Suddenly, the pilots are contacted by radar operators on the Princeton.
The Princeton control comes up and says, we're going to suspend training. We have real-world tasking.
The pilots are re-vectored to a new destination, but aren't told why.
So we start heading off to the west. The other airplane is on my left-hand side.
I was the junior pilot trying to keep up with the senior pilot in the lead aircraft.
We're looking, and we're talking to each other trying to figure this out.
The Princeton's Aegis Spy-1 radar system is powerful enough to track an object as small as a baseball at an altitude of 80,000 feet, but the jets are flying blind.
We tried to see what was out there.
So it goes down 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, gets all the way down. They get to a point where they can't separate us from the blimp. They call it merge plot, which means you're in the same space as whatever you're looking for, and you got to start looking outside because the radar can't help you anymore.
Then far below in the water, they see what looks like a plane crash or a submerging submarine. But the weapons officer in the rear seat of Fravor's jet spots something else.
I hear, hey, Skipper, do you see? And as he's saying that, I notice the Tic Tac. It's white, it has no wings, it has no rotors. I go, holy, what is that? And he goes, I don't know.
According to this leaked summary of the incident, contact was made here, 30 miles off the coast, 70 miles south of the US-Mexico border. At first, the strange craft stays close to the surface, moving unlike anything the pilots had ever seen.
This thing would go instantaneous from one way to another, similar to if you threw a ping pong ball against a wall. And we start to kind of orbit, because now we're going to watch this thing. We start a right-hand turn, and we're going from a clock code. The object is in the middle of the clock, and we're at 6 o'clock, and we're driving around the circle. So we get to about 9 o'clock, and it's just still doing its little erratic thing, kind of moving around this disturbance in the water. And I go, hey, I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to go down there. As we're coming down nice and easy, we get to about the 12 o'clock position, and all of a sudden it goes, boop, and it kind of turns, and now it's mirroring us, and it starts coming up. And we're like, okay, now it knows we're here.
It seemed to be aware, and it seems to recognize him.
It goes from basically just almost a hover into a pretty aggressive climb up to our altitude, so there's a bit of fear because now you're out there dealing with something that you have no idea what it is. It's actually reacting to what we're doing. I'm kind of pulling nose, you know, to where he's going to be, and he's coming up. He just rapidly accelerates, crosses my nose, and it's gone. And I'm like, whoa.
The Tic Tac appears to have vanished. But as the jets streak towards a prearranged rendezvous location, known as the Cap Point, the radio chatter becomes frantic.
The controller from the Princeton comes up right as we're doing all this and says, hey, sir, you're not going to believe this. He goes, but that thing is at your Cap Point.
According to Fravor, the Tic Tac accelerated from a standing position and flew approximately 60 miles in under a minute, as fast as 3,700 miles an hour. How did the Tic Tac know the pilot's Cap Point? And how did it accelerate so quickly?
You got something that can accelerate and disappear and then show up 60 miles away. Kind of in awe a little bit, because you go, whoa, we don't have that. You know, and I'm talking, we're flying one of the premier airplanes on the planet. There is a capability out there, don't know where it's from, not saying it's from outer space, but not saying it's from here either.
Back on the Nimitz, the pilots tell the rest of the squadron what just happened.
The next crew is getting ready. So we're talking to them about this, and they're like, you gotta be kidding.
They took us seriously, and the Wizzo, the guy in the back seat, said, I'm gonna go find it.
The next jet to launch had a targeting pod with an infrared sensor and camera.
It jammed the radar, but he got a lock on it, and that's the video that you see. That doesn't weird you out. I don't know what does.
Links are in the description. So all those videos you just saw there, go check them out. If you want the original black and white, that's going to be the first link there. And then all the others are going to be listed after that. But fucking hell. What do you think of that intro? I hope you all liked it. I've been working on that a while now. So this is a subject, this guy here, he's been on my mind for quite some time now. I've seen interviews with him before, a couple of years ago. But now he's just done a extended interview and has, talked in depth about what he saw that day and what his other pilots saw that day. This is all recorded, it's been logged, it's in the books, and the Pentagon has released that footage as official footage and said that they don't know what that object is in it either. So that's pretty fucking nuts. My thoughts are not... well, I'll play this video now, the in-depth conversation, and then at the end I'll give my thoughts on what I think this thing is. So this is the interview with Fravor. I hope you enjoy it. Just one thing, when you're watching this guy, try to figure out if he's telling the truth or not, just based on what you've picked up from life. Because what this guy is saying is monumental. If what he's saying is the truth, the impacts are huge, which is probably a good sign that he's lying. So just watch him and just keep that in mind. Pay very close attention to him. Alrighty, enjoy.
To go train, and they canceled the mission, and they sent us on. There's all kinds of rumors out here. There's all kinds of... After this has come out, so originally it was the four of us. There's 2 jets, 2 people in each jet. They're F-18Fs. Okay? There is no video from our event. It was all 4 sets of eyeballs staring at this thing, and then when we came back and told it, when Chad and his pilot took off, that's when Chad got the video of it. And we're like, that's it. That's it. And flying out, we get vectored. They come up and tell us, hey, we're going to cancel training. This is a USS Princeton, so this is a Aegis cruiser. So we're talking to one controller who is like, hey, sir, first he asked what ordnance we have on board, and I laugh because we don't carry live ordnance in training typically because bad shit stuff happens. Usually someone forgets to put a switch on, and then the missile comes off and hits a good airplane, and it's not good. So we had what's called a CATM-9, which is really just a blue tube with the AIM-9 seeker on the front of it, which is an IR missile. So there's only 2 ways to get it off. You can beat it off with a sledgehammer. You can take this thing and you put a wrench in it and it unlocks the lugs and pulls the lugs back in that hold it on. When it really fires, the impulse from the engine actually throws the lugs forward and breaks that release, and it comes off down the rail. That's how it works. So they said, hey, well, we have real world tasking. So as we're going out, my wingman, the other pilot, she maneuvers the airplane to the left-hand side of me. So she's kind of stepped up like this. And I'll use your mic box to start. So as we're going out, they're calling ranges. They're called BRA calls, bearing range and altitude. And they're telling us, hey, it's at 40 miles or 50 miles and 40 miles and 30 miles. So they're saying, hey, 270, 30, 20,000. That's all they say. So we got our radars, and we had mechanically scanned radars at the time, APG-73. Good piece of gear. APG-79, new one's way better. But anyway, they have a contact on their radar. They don't know what it is. They just have a blip. They have a little blip. Well, they've been watching these things, and what he told me is they had been looking at these things as we're driving. He says, sir, we've been tracking these things for about 2 weeks. We had been at sea for 2 weeks. He goes, this is the first time we've had planes airborne. We want you to go see what these are. So we start driving out there, and as we get down to, he's going, 20 miles, 15 miles, 10 miles, and then you get to a point where they call merge plot, which means we are inside of the resolution cell of the radar, because radars don't see everything. So they have a range, and they have an azimuth resolution. right? So, and it's basically, think of a little cube. So they can, and the whole sky is made of all these little cubes, and they're looking. So if you're inside a cube with something and you're both inside the same little cube, then the radar can only see one thing. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
So they call merge plot. Well, when we say merge plot to us, it means he's right around, something's around you, get your head out. So we're not looking at radar scopes anymore and the WIZZOs can look, but everyone, it's heads out. When they say merge plot, you're done looking at your displays inside, you're doing this, and you're trying to find it. So as we look out to the right and you look high and low, because he could be anywhere from the surface all the way up. Now, keep in mind, the ship is like probably 60 miles away, so it can't see the surface. And you can do your standard radar horizon calculation and go, hey, it's the thing is 40 feet off the water, the panel. Can he really see? You know, there are radars that can see around the curve, but let's just say that it can't at this time. So you go, is it, you know, where's it at? So as we're looking around, we see, now this is it's a clear day. There's no clouds and there's no white caps. It's just a calm, it's actually a perfect day. If you owned a sailboat, it was that 5 to 10 knots of wind and you just want to kind of go out there and you're not going to get beat up and have white water come over. It was the perfect day to own a sailboat. 50, it's unrestricted visibility. You can see literally all the way to the horizon. It's just clear.
Wow.
It's nothing. And we're basically off the coast. If you look at a map and you go San Diego and then Ensenada, Mexico, we're kind of in between that. And we're probably about, by the time this all hits, we're probably, I don't know, 80, 100, I don't know, but somewhere out, it's pretty far off the coast.
Perfect
But
visibility.
from
yeah.
20,000 feet, you'd be amazed. You can do the calculation. You can see stuff, you know, you'll see land 50 miles away. You know, you can see, you know, and when you're looking at a continent, it's really easy to see. You're not looking at an island. I mean, you're looking at Mexico.
And you can see on the white caps in the water if there is any.
Oh yeah, they're easy. Yeah, for us, we look at it because we know if it's natural wind or so. If it's a really white cap windy day, then the ship's just kind of barely be moving when we land on it. It makes it actually easier. If the ship has to move where it's got a big weight because it has to make its own wind when we land, which is the day that it was this day, you go, oh, okay. And it creates what's called, we call it the burble, but when the air flows across the flight deck, it drops behind the ship, you know,
yeah.
and then it kicks back up. So when you're coming board to land, it's going to make you go up a little bit and then you're going to fall and you got to anticipate that to stay on glide slope. So we're pretty conscious of what's going on out there with the waves and the wind. So we look, there's no waves, there's no wind, there's no white caps. And we look down and we see white water. So if you put a piece of land, a seamount below the surface, like, you know, even 20 feet below the surface, it's big enough, as the waves come in, you know, waves have height and length. When they come in, that's what happens on the shore. When a wave comes in, it hits and then it starts to collapse and it pushes the wave height up because it can't go anymore. And then it breaks over the top and you get,
and that's where you get the white.
So what happens is at sea, when you get a seamount, you'll see stuff come in, the wave will crash and you'll get white water. You can go out when it's high tide and any one of the coasts, you can go out here off of Boston and go, hey, at low tide, I can see those rocks. And at high tide, I can't see the rocks are covered, but there will be white water around those rocks. You'll be able to tell there's something underneath the surface. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's what it was. We don't see an object because there's all kinds of, oh, they saw another craft below the wave. We didn't see anything below the water. We just saw white water. But the white water, and I like to shape it, you can say it was across, I say it's about the size of a 737. So it looks like if you took a 737, put it about 15, 20 feet below the water, so the wave's breaking over the top, and you're going to get white water where the plane is at, you'd see this kind of shape. So it looks like a cross. So as we're looking down off the right side, the backseater in the other airplane, Jim, says, this is that talking in partials again. He says, hey, Skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I go, what the hell is that? In the night. So we see the white water, and that's what draws our eyes down there. Otherwise, we'd have never seen it. So we see this,
Like,
and then we see this little white Tic Tac because we're about 20,000 feet above it, and it's going basically north, south, and then east, west, north, and it's abrupt. It's very abrupt. So it's not like a helicopter. If a helicopter's going sideways and it goes once, it's going sideways left, and it goes right. What it'll do is it's got a speed, it slows down because there's inertia, and it stops, and then it goes back the other way. This thing's not. It's like left, right with no. So as a pilot, the first thing you think is it's a helicopter, right? So you go, oh, what is? Because when we see it, it's moving. We're like, oh, helicopter. So the first thing you look for to see if it's a helicopter when they're doing that, because usually when they get down there towards that 50 feet, you'll get rotor wash. You see it in the movies when the helicopter's by the water, water comes up the sides because the downdraft, you know, like a thunderstorm will do that. It pushes the air down and then it has to come up the sides. So you see it and you go, well, there's no rotor wash. What is that thing? So by this time we're driving around. So if we were at the 6 o'clock, we're driving around towards that 9 o'clock position, and we're just watching this thing, and it's still pointed north south, and it's going left right, and it's kind of moving around the object. And if I had to say it biased itself, it was biased towards the bottom half. So if you've got the east west and then the north south kind of across, it's hanging out on the southern thing that's hanging out. It's just kind of moving around up, down, left, and it's crossing over it. It's going up. It's just kind of. So now we're like, what the hell is that? So then I go, hey, I'm gonna go check it out. And the other pilot says, I'm going to stay up here. And I said, yeah, stay up high. Cause now we get a different perspective. So she's up here and I'm down here as I'm descending. She can watch, cause right now, all I'm watching is the Tic Tac. She can watch me and the Tic Tac. So she gets a God's eye view of everything that's going on, which is really important. You'll hear people say it's high cover, whatever. She's watching me, which is, it's perfect as the story goes on, because it gives us two perspectives, of a perspective that's about 8,000 feet above us when that thing disappears. And they don't, because if it's just like, oh, I lost it, and they go, no, it's over to the right, we can still see it. We all lost it at the same time. So as we come down, we get to about 12 o'clock and I'm descending, and it's an easy descent. I'm doing about 300 knots, which is a really good airspeed for the airplane for maneuvering, because I have everything available to me at that speed. So I'm coming down. And as I get to 12 o'clock, as the Tic Tac's doing this, it's like it's aware of us, and it just goes bloop, and it kind of points out towards the west and starts coming up. So now it's obviously knows that we're there. Whatever this thing is, it knows that we're there. So as we drive around, it's coming up, and I'm just coming down. I'm just watching it. Now you gotta remember, this whole thing is like 5 minutes. This is not like we saw it and it was gone, or I saw lights in the sky and they were gone. We watched this thing on a crystal clear day with 4 trained observers to watch this thing fly around. So we're like, okay. So I get over to the 8 o'clock position, and I'm a couple thousand feet above it. And so I'm probably at about 15K. I think it is. I think that's my story, is about 15. It's just estimating. So you can see it's just a really easy descent, because so they're still at about 20,000 feet. So they're driving
and
around
then you're
above us.
slowly
And I'm descending. They're staying up there. So I'm kind of doing this as they drive around. Okay. So I'm looking at this thing, and it's about the 2 o'clock position. We're about the 8 o'clock position. And I'm like, oh, I've got enough altitudes. I'm going to cut across the circle. I tell the guy in my back seat, dude, I'm going to do this. He's like, go for it, skip. Cause I was a skipper. So I cut across the bottom. So I'm kind of almost coming out co-altitude as this thing's coming out. I'm going to meet it. And I'm driving, and I get to I'm probably about a half mile away, which you think, well, a half mile is pretty far. A half mile in aviation it's nothing. You can tell there's a pilot in an airplane. You can see all kinds of stuff at a half mile. You can see pretty good detail. So I'm like right there, and it's coming across my nose. So now I'm basically pointing back towards the east. So I'm cutting across, because I'm going to the 3 o'clock position. It's at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to meet it at 3 o'clock. So as I do this, it just accelerates and disappears. So this happens at around, estimating about 12,000 feet. So they're at 20. So they've got about 8,000 foot of altitude above us when this happens. And it just, as it crosses our nose, it accelerates, and literally in less than, probably less than a half second, it just goes, and it's gone. And so we're like, and the first thing is, dude, did you guys see it? The other airplane's like, it's gone. We have no idea where it's at. So we kind of spin around real quick. I go, well, let's see what's down here. And I turn around, we're looking for the whitewater, and the whitewater's gone. There's nothing. It's literally all blue. So now you go. And I remember telling the guy in my back seat, I go, dude, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty weirded out, because this is, I had at the time like 30 some hundred hours of flying. I'd been doing it for 18 years.
It's nothing like anything you've seen.
No. So as we turn, we go, well, let's just go back, because now I got to put on my real hat, which we have to train, because we're getting ready to deploy to, overseas. So we got to get our training done. So that's my mindset, especially as a CO, because I got to get training out of the flight time, because I'm responsible to do that. So, hey, let's go back. And the guy who's going to be the bad guys is the CO of the Marine Squadron. And so Cheeks is at the other, he's listening to all this happen, because he's just like, because when he first went out, they were going to do him, but the little Hornets, the Legacy Hornets, the F-18Cs, don't have as much gas as the Super Hornets. So he had launched first, and they were going to do him. And then when they knew we were off the deck, they just told him, hey, go to your cap point down south, and we'll pass this off to the Super Hornets.
What's a cap point, by the way?
That's where we hold. So it's called a combat air patrol point. So we're just going to hold at one end. He's going to hold at the other end. It's kind of like, hey, you guys are going to get each. Think of it, if it's a football field, we're going to sit on one goal line. He's going to sit on the other goal line. And when they say go, we're going to run at each other and then try and do something in the middle of the field and then go back to our reset points. Okay. Just listening to what's going on. because he's like, because they canceled training. So what else is he going to do? He's just going to hang out there and do circles while he's waiting, him and his wingman. So they're listening to all this go on. We come back up to train. We go back as we're flying back. The controller, because we're talking to the kid on the Princeton, they're called OSs. They're operations specialists. They're the ones that run the radars. And we're talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap. It showed back up. It just popped up. You know, this is like 60 miles away. It just reappears." And we're like, "Oh, okay." So we got the radars out. We're looking for it. We get out there. We never see it. We never see it again. We do what we need to do. We come back to the ship. Of course, now we're like, "Oh, this is going to be." I told him, I go, "Dude, you know, we're going to catch shit for this. When we get back to the ship, word's going to get out, and we're just going to catch maximum shit." And we did.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that joking, you know. So the ship plays movies. We have movies on the boat, and they do 12 hours of movies. So they repeat because there's a day check and a night check. So the same movies in the morning and night play. So you never get to watch a whole movie on the boat, which drives my wife crazy because I'll watch stuff on TV that way too. I'll be like, "Oh, hey, I've seen this." And then I'll jump into a movie in the middle, and then I'll pick it up later and I'll see the beginning and I'll put it all together because that's how we have to do it because we're so busy. Well, the movies became, it was Men in Black, Aliens, Independence Day. Chad, when he took off, when he got the video, we landed, we told them, "Hey, look, we just chased this thing." They're like, "What?" I go, "Chased it." And they're like, "What?" I go, "Dude," and I go, and I told him, I said, "Dude, get video." And he goes, and that's how he is. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go," and he was determined he was gonna find this thing. So when you look at his video, and this is the stuff that isn't out that they don't see because not all all you see is the FLIR tape. That's the targeting pod, the forward-looking infrared receiver.
I'll probably overlay the video,
So
but people have seen
when
it.
he goes out, it's what he's looking at on his displays is he has basically 2 radar displays up. He has azimuth and range on the right one, and he has azimuth and elevation on the left one. So this is called the AZL display, and this is basically the PPI, which is you're at the bottom of it. You're at the bottom of the square. It's really taken this. It's taken a cone because a radar really looks left and right from a point, and it squares it out. So the entire bottom of the scope that we look at is us because they do this. They square it off. So he goes out, and when he first sees it, he gets a radar return on it because when he's not trying to lock it. So the radar's just throwing energy out and getting it. You know, it's a Doppler radar. So when it's in search mode, that's all it's doing. It's going, "Oh, I can see you. I can see." And it's looking for a return. So he gets a return. So he wants to see what it is because all you get is a little green square unless it builds a track file on it. Well, the little green square is just sitting there. It's not moving because it's sitting in one spot in space. He locks it up. When he goes to lock it up, now he's putting a bunch of energy on it. So he's telling the radar, "Stare down that line of sight, and whatever's there, I want you to grab it and build a track file on it, which will tell us how high it is, how fast it is, and the direction that it's going." Okay. The radar's smart enough that when the signal comes back, if it's been messed with, it will tell you, it'll give you indications that I'm being jammed. So that's all it is you send a signal out, it manipulates the signal either in range and velocity or whatever, and it sends it back. And the radar was smart enough to go, "That is not a return that I'm expecting. Something's messing with me. I'm being jammed." And it shows you, and it puts strobes up. It gives these lines on the radar, and it does some stuff. So you can immediately, well, it does. It goes full into it. It's being jammed in about every mode you can possibly see because everything comes up and this aspect gets along. It's all kinds of, I don't want to get into details, but you can tell it's being jammed. So an active jamming is when you actively jam another platform. Yes, it's technically an active war.
Feels like you should be freaking out at this point. I mean,
well, he does it. And then in the back seat, so they don't have a stick and throttle. They have their side stick controllers, so they can control all the sensors and they can just toggle around and do stuff. So he has the ability to just move one switch real quick and it will go from that azimuth elevation on the radar to the targeting pod. Well, as soon as he commanded the radar to look at that target, the targeting pod goes, "Oh, what's over there?" And it'll stare because it goes down the line of sight because all the systems are hooked together. You can decouple them, but they're going to automatically couple up. So when he castles over, it's a switch. It looks like a castle switch. What's a castle? So when he moves that thing to the left and he swaps the displays out and he says, "Instead of looking at the radar, I want to look at the targeting pod," he sees it on the targeting pod because the targeting pod's already looking there. And now he's on a passive track because he's not literally sending any energy out. He's just receiving IR energy from the Tic Tac. And then the system itself will track the pixels and the contrast differences. It depends on what mode you're in. So it says, "Oh," and that's where those little bars you see in the video where the bars come up left and right.
Doing some vision-based tracking.
That's exactly what it is. So, and then
that's the video.
He goes through.
Changes zooms, changes the mode.
He goes through all the modes. So there's the narrow, medium, and wide. So wide is far away. medium, and then narrow, and then there's the TV mode, and he goes from IR mode to the TV mode. The cool thing with the TV mode is narrow IR mode is only medium TV mode. So you can actually get closer with narrow TV mode. It's got a better zoom capability when you go into TV mode. So he goes through all those things, and that's when you see it going from a black background to a white background.
He's trying to figure out what the heck is this.
Well, yeah, and he wants to get as much data as he can on it based on the different modes instead of just staring at it going, what is that thing?
So pretty damn nuts. It's a lot to take in. It's pretty full on. It leads to a lot of thoughts now. I've spent a lot of time on this, so I feel like I've gone through all the parts of worrying about if it's aliens or not. I'm fairly certain it's not. I see no reason why aliens would want to come down and communicate with us. It seems very unlikely. The chance of them existing, of course, it's infinite space, so there has to be. It's just mathematically impossible for there not to be. Visiting Earth, though, I doubt very much. It's unless 15-year-old Timmy the alien steals his parents' spaceship and travels here just to fuck around. I don't see a legitimate point for them coming to visit. It just doesn't make sense. Which makes me think that it's probably closer to our government, or the American government in particular, in this case, is somehow making these machines. That also seems fucking impossible because of how he's describing it moving. We don't know of anything like that. We don't know of anything like that at all. Now, Skunkworks has kept a lot of military planes secret for a long time. They are very good at it. They compartmentalize all of their parts and they subcontract it out to private companies. So those private companies can individually monitor those people to make sure they don't leak stuff. And it works very well. The SR-71 Blackbird, that was secret for about 20 years. The B-2 Bomber, that was secret for, I think, 16 years, that one. So they can keep these things secret for a long time. This technology, though, it's beyond both those stealth fighters that I just mentioned and bombers. I mean, it doesn't even compare. They're not even on the same playing field. But if you're making me pick between aliens and the government spending a shit ton of money and developing stuff that the rest of the world doesn't have, if you're making me choose between those things, I'm picking aliens last for everything. For every scenario you give me, aliens are coming up last. Like the aliens are behind it. It just doesn't fucking make sense. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? Probably not. Then again, is the government doing this? Is it even a private company doing this, considering these things are, completely blank on the outside? They don't have any flags or anything. It's weird, but I'd lean towards the government being behind this than anything else, and it would be some sort of secret aircraft they've developed. It's air and water, so I don't know what you'd call that. It's kind of all. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. It's really fucking crazy, but I thought you all deserve to see it, and I hope you took something from it. Hopefully it gets you thinking. That's most likely what some governments of the world are up to. Pretty crazy shit.